Good afternoon, everyone. As a commute talk, my talk today is going to be on why the people closest to pain should design the solution. I'm a social worker by profession, which means I design and implement interventions that help solve social problems. For the past, it's been over a decade now that I've been working on some of the most complex social problems in the country. And this includes issues like child marriage, gender based violence, poverty, mental health issues, climate vulnerability, sustainability, and so on, right? And through all these issues, what I've seen is that good solutions that we typically consider good, does not always work. They fail more times than I can count. Now, what I mean by good solutions is solutions designed by expert. Solutions that were made with good resources, with multiple capabilities, with backing, with research, with all the resources in the world, and still on the field, it did not work. It fell apart. There are multiple reasons why this might happen. So, to illustrate, let me give an example of what happened with us. So, 2 years ago, we were doing a project in Bardia, which is in the Tarai region of Nepal. It was a project on using sports for adolescent mental health well being. Now, this was an area where assessment had flagged poor mental health. And then this was an area where there was no typically designed sports for the adolescents. So our idea was pretty simple, just catch two and two together, right? Because sports has been researched to have good mental well-being. So we just put two and two together, use sports in order to improve the well-being of mental health. So at first, everything worked pretty well. The children from the whole ward came along. They played, they laughed, and they had fun. And we thought, okay, this is going pretty well. We're doing great. And then suddenly, over the next few days, the girls, they stopped coming. The boys were still coming, but the girls, they stopped. We started with 50, and then it fell down to 24, and then 12, and then just 4. And that left us wondering, so what happened, right? Initially, everybody was having so much fun. What went wrong that people stopped coming? We thought, was it us? Was it something wrong with our initiative? Was it something wrong with the location? Was it something wrong with the coaches? Were the girls uncomfortable? And then we went across the community. We tried to talk to the people just to figure out what was actually going on. And then we found out that the people in this community thought that if the girls, if they played sports, their uterus would fall down, like Patig or Khassa. They literally believed that if the girls, they played sports, they could not be able to bear children in the future. And then this was not the only thing that was happening. So apparently, ironically, they believed that girls would be fine walking kilometers with buckets of water. Girls would be fine washing clothes of the entire families. Girls would be fine working for hours in the fields. But what was not okay for the girls' bodies was just playing sports. And something else was happening at the same time. This uterus story is not the full story. So just a prior few days ago, before this was happening, when we were talking to the community, when we were talking to the parents did not want, they were a little hesitant to send the children to play the sports. And we found that this area had very high prevalence. This area had a history of childhood organ trafficking. Parents thought that they were skeptical about us coming there to steal the kidneys of the children. And their skepticism was not built in irrationality. They had a history there. Something had happened there. They had a history of exploitation. And even this was not it. Over the course of the project, something else happened as well. Children as young as 11, 12, 14 years old were getting married. Girls, boys, both of them. Girls were getting pregnant. Girls as young as 12 and 11 were getting pregnant. And many of them also dropped out of school while this was happening. So we're like, okay, we should just talk to the parents. This is wrong. This is illegal. This is harmful. We should talk to the parents about what's going on. We should make them understand. So we went door to door, family to family, just to tell the parents that child marriage is illegal. It is harmful. It harmed their parents. It harmed the children's future. Surprisingly, the families agreed. They were like, yeah, we know that this is harmful. We later found out what was happening was children, they fell in love, they eloped, they got pregnant, and because they could not take care of themselves, they fell back into their families. But a lot had changed before eloping and after eloping, right? Because this was a very patriarchal setting. The boy child was now responsible to financially take care of his wife, of his family. And the girl child was now a daughter in law, a bride, and sometimes also a mother. Both of them had additional responsibilities now. So, whatever I'm trying to get with this is in one project, in one context, in one area, so much was happening. Myth and beliefs were determining what girls could do with their bodies. History of exploitation was saying who the communities could trust. Adolescents were taking decisions about their futures that no sports project or no mental health project was designed to even address. So from the outside, this looked like a mental health / sports project, but from the inside, it was something much more complicated. So when we're talking about problems that we're trying to solve, especially in the context of social problems, we are never looking at the full problem. The full problem is almost always so much more complicated. We are trained as practitioners to divide social reality into sectors. Education is dealt with differently, gender violence is dealt with differently, climate change is dealt with differently, employment is dealt with differently, poverty is dealt with differently. But these are all talked about in isolation. One of the reasons we do this is because that's how systems are organized. That's how budgets are allocated. That's how our departments are divided. That's how our education is divided. But communities, they don't live in sectors, they live in systems. And these systems are interconnected, they're overlapping, they're contradictory. And the people who are navigating those systems every day develop the kind of knowledge that no external assessment can fully replicate. A child not going to school is not just an education problem. It may also be hunger. It may also be debt. It may also be caste, migration. It may also be someone telling them that this is not where the future lies. So when we look at the situation from an external lens, when we judge them from an external lens, when we judge the parents or guardians from an external lens, just tell that they might be lacking awareness, we are not describing their reality. We are just revealing the limits of our own. This brings me to the first thing that I want to leave you with. Ask where the problem lives, not only who is suffering. So when we misdiagnose the location of a problem, we tend to design solutions that address the symptom while leaving the system intact. So in Bardia, if we had concluded that all girls needed were just sports, we could have just opened up the sports field, counted empty attendance, and just concluded that girls there were not interested in sports at all, right? But the barrier was not availability or accessibility. The barrier was a belief system that decided before we arrived, and that was going to be there long after we left, what girls' bodies were permitted to do. So the response that we had to work with had to be at that level. So that is what we did. We brought in female athletes from the Tarai region, national level, state level athletes. We made them discuss with the community. We talked to the community at that level. We named the myth and we did not look away. But it took a while for us to reach this conclusion. However, the girls already understood all of this. They had understood it the whole time. So the second thing I want to leave you with is trust is infrastructure. We talk about trust in development work all the time, but mostly as a communications issue. We think that the right tone or the right word might enable communities to trust us. But in reality, trust is mostly based on evidence. It's mostly based on history, whether they have a history of exploitation, whether some other community, some other people have come and exploited them. When parents in Bardia thought that we were there to steal organs, they were not being irrational. They were just acting out of history, a history of exploitation, a pattern that they had developed. So when people usually do not participate in development work, whether that is development work designed by the government or the CSO or INGO, we have this tendency to diagnose the community rather than reflecting on our own practices. Are they resistant? Are they unmotivated? Are they unaware? But we don't realize that they are calculating risk that we never had to calculate as an external factor. They are making rational decisions in irrational systems. So people close to the problem know things that don't show up in baseline surveys. They know which local leader actually respect. They know what exists in practice and what is in paper. This is called design knowledge. Yet, we keep leaving it out of design. The third thing is, don't invite people after the solution has already been designed. In Nepal's NGO sector, or even in Nepal's multiple development projects, we only bring in people once everything has been said and done. People send out RFPs, request for proposals, call for proposals. Proposals is being set, monitoring evaluation is designed, the project, entire project is designed. And that is when it's time for implementation, that is when we reach out to the communities. But for real design means communities need to be present when we are deciding even anything is needed at all, or what the communities need is completely entirely different. This is especially important in Nepal's development sector because most of our funding is external by different countries. And mostly, these projects are dependent on the priority of those who give this money. And these priorities change every single year. 1 year is climate change, 1 year it's AI, 1 year it's civic tech, 1 year is mental health. They change every year. But people who are facing these problems, a woman in rural Nepal does not face gender-based violence on Monday and climate on Tuesday and then poverty on Wednesday. No, they're facing every single of this problem, every single one of these problems on the same day at the same time. And she usually understands the connections between them better than any funding architecture does. So when we're also talking about designs, minute things might make a big difference. At Heart of Nepal, the organization that I co-founded, one of the main questions we receive is our school meal program. So we have a school meal program through which we fund the school meal of the children of 11 schools. And whenever we have a potential donor, a stakeholder, their question is, why spend so much money on food? But food is not just about eating. It's also about navigating hunger. It's also about navigating poverty. So when this food is also circulated through produce made by the women, then bought in by the schools, then it connects multiple things together. It connects education, it connects agriculture, it connects hunger, it connects consumption to production, entire chain into one functioning system. So now I'll be careful here, because when I say people closest to problems should design the solutions, I'm not asking you to idealize communities. Because communities can reproduce caste, they can reproduce patriarchy, they can silence the most vulnerable people within them. Community-led work does not mean accepting local power as it is. It means moving design closer to lived reality while also asking who is heard, who is excluded, whose pain becomes so normal that it stops being named. And that is where the work gets genuinely difficult. Because the question that most organizations avoid is, are we willing to move power? Not a consultation, not a focus group, but actually money, decision-making, authority, credit, and time move towards the people who actually hold the knowledge. So in Bardia, we stayed with the question, where does this problem actually live? And we found it in a myth about girls' bodies, in a fear about organ trafficking, and in adolescents making adult decisions because no one had designed anything that reached the real circumstances of their lives. The girls on that field that day already knew all of this. They had been navigating it every single day before we arrived, and they would navigate it after we left. The question was never whether they had knowledge. The question was whether we were willing to design with it. And this is the shift that I'm asking for. Not a new framework, not a new sector, just a genuine reckoning with who holds the knowledge that makes solution work, and a commitment to make sure those people are in the room when the decisions are getting made. Thank you.